What's going on, guys? My name is Tommy. Welcome back to the channel. Today, our Pathfinder 2nd Edition preview content takes a little bit of a left turn. As I'm sure most of us know, last weekend was PaizoCon. The Glass Cannon Network was there. They played some Crypt of the Everflame. According to my sources, there wasn't anything too crazy revealed about 2nd Edition within that game, just, you know, people hanging out having fun. If I'm incorrect, by all means, let me know. I'll go back, watch everything, and catch up. Otherwise, today, we're going to do a little bit of speculation on every class we have yet to see. If you guys are liking what you're seeing, as always, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Helps out a lot. Before we dive in, though, real quick, we have a brand new patron today. This episode of your Pathfinder 2nd Edition preview content was brought to you in part by Joseph Citadino. My friend, thank you so much for all your support. And hey, if you're hearing this, check your Patreon inbox for your Discord invite. Let's get to some speculating, shall we? Alrighty, so since we have quite a bit of ground to cover on this one, I'm going to keep the speculation to quick little blurbs, and I'm going to limit it to 3 each. We're going to take them in ABC order, and we're going to start with the Bard. In the Pathfinder playtest, I predict that the Bard will have level 1 to 10 spells. He'll be a caster just as powerful as the Wizard or Sorcerer. I also predict that Bardic Masterpieces will function kind of like metamagic feats. In Pathfinder 1st Edition, a Bardic Masterpiece was something you could take in place of a feat or certain spells. You'd spend some rounds of your performance, and in return, a thing would happen. I predict it's going to be the same idea. Bardic Performance will turn into spell points. You'll spend an extra spell point when you do a thing, or maybe an extra action to activate some kind of Bardic Performance, which alters the way your spells are cast, and probably also your Bardic Performance as well. Lastly, and this one might be a bit of a stretch, but as the class that buffs everyone else, I predict that the Bard will be able to manipulate something or other to help people have more reactions in a given round. Whether that means burning a spell point, using his own reaction to help somebody else out, or maybe at very high level play, passing out another reaction to everyone under his Bardic Performance. It seems really on flavor for, again, the buffer of the party to be able to do these kind of things. Of course, I don't necessarily think it will be on the order of a Combat Reflexes build from 1st Edition that has 25 million attacks of opportunity in a given round, but 1, maybe 2 or 3, I could definitely see it. Next, we'll move to the Barbarian. In Pathfinder 2nd Edition, I predict, much like we're seeing with a lot of the classes, there's going to be a bit of a merger between the Barbarian and some of the other hybrid classes, specifically this time, the Blood Rager. I predict that in Pathfinder 2nd Edition, the Barbarian will have spell points, and he will use those spell points, possibly with a class feat or two, to do things like cast Enlarge Person on himself, cast Haste on himself, maybe even polymorph into something or other for certain totem paths. We've already seen the fighters getting a little bit of brawler stuff, the rogue is getting a little bit of ninja stuff, and familiars are starting to look like eidolons. And hey, if you guys didn't catch last week's video about that stuff, follow this card right up here to be directed to it. My second prediction is that the 2nd Edition Barbarian will be able to add his Constitution to armor class, not unlike the 5e Barbarian. This might cost a class feat, and to jump the gun a little, it might cost a class feat for the monk to be able to do this as well. But we are borrowing some things from 5th Edition, and I think this is a very flavorful thing we could borrow, because what's better than not getting hurt from an attack because you're literally in so good a shape that that weapon can't harm you. My third and final prediction is that the Barbarian will lose its any non-lawful alignment restriction. Of course, we see that they're still on the fence about Paladins and how they want to go with their alignment, and we know that in the playtest they will be lawful good. But the Barbarian is not nearly under as much scrutiny as a Paladin is, and from 3.5 to Pathfinder, we've already given the Barbarian, most of the time, the ability to read. I think it's only fair that we let the people who want to be lawful good zealots of a given deity, or lawful neutral enforcers of the law with, you know, great swords and muscle and stuff, to be able to do that. Next in line is the Druid. My first prediction for the Pathfinder 2nd Edition Druid is the Animal Companion will require a feat, much like the Wizard has to take a feat to acquire a familiar. By that notion, the Druid will probably have domains from 1st level or some kind of spend spell points to do a thing equivalent. But again, some people just don't want to track that second character sheet. Oh, and we've seen the fact that druids can get familiars now with a feat, so it only tracks, in my mind, that the druid will take a feat to get their animal companion. My second prediction does pertain to that animal companion. I predict it's going to function in a lot of ways like the hunter animal companion does. Though I think the ranger will see more of the hunter class moving forward, I think the druid and probably the druid's animal companion, hey, maybe the rangers as well, will get the aspects that a hunter did. You spend an action to let your animal hulk out a little bit or make it a little more sleek or give it webbed toes or things of that nature, to give it bonuses on checks, to give it bonuses to its strength or dexterity scores, etc., etc. Finally, I predict that the druid will receive, much like the clerics and paladins have anathema and a paladin code, a druid code or a flat specific anathema for what constitutes ceasing to revere nature. Of course, this will still be 100% between the player and the GM, but I believe it will be much more fleshed out than simply a druid who ceases to revere nature or wears metal armor. You know, actually, I could see druids getting metal armor. In Pathfinder 2nd edition, we did allow them to use more than just a scimitar in Pathfinder 1st edition after all. Next down the line is the monk. I'm going to borrow the prediction that I used for the barbarian. Again, for the monk, I predict that getting your wisdom to your AC will be a feat. A monk class feat that one must take before they can have that really powerful buff. In the same fashion that Divine Grace is now a reaction in Pathfinder 2nd edition for the paladins, it's not just constantly on, the monk will have to be taxed in some way, shape, or form to get that buff to their AC. My second prediction for the monk is that, much again like the barbarian, they will no longer be restricted to lawful only alignments. You assume the adventuring monk has graduated from adventuring monk school, or, you know, the monastery, and gone out into the world to make his or her own choices. And from those choices, one might well become a neutral good character who cares about the well-being of everyone around them, but still knows how to, you know, do a flying judo kick. Lastly, I predict that the monk will be the only class, at least in the playtest, with access to the style feats as we recognize them in Pathfinder 1st edition. They'll become class feats for the monk, and that will be the draw to the class. No longer can one just grab Kraken style on a given grappler or Wolf style on a given I'm gonna knock you over and put Bestow Curse directly on your face. No, now that is intrinsic to the martial artist of the game, the monk. Second to last today, we have the Ranger. I predict the Pathfinder 2nd edition Ranger, kind of like the Druid, will merge pretty strongly with the Hunter. In this way, I believe things like favored enemies and favored terrains will be class feats that you specifically decide, hey, I want this for my Ranger, and instead you will have options, again, kind of like the Druid and his animal companion, also your animal companion, which you probably will be taxed to get, of buffing yourself with aspects or maybe even skirmisher tricks from the skirmisher archetype from Pathfinder 1st edition. It's much in that same vein. My second prediction for the Ranger is that they will no longer be spellcasters. Much like the Paladin, they will receive spell points to be able to do what they do, and it will be class feats that differentiate between the Ranger who's really good with a certain couple of weapons, and the Ranger who is able to help the rest of the party navigate the wilderness with nature magic. Except, of course, again, on spell points. Lastly, I predict that Ranger combat styles will be overhauled. I don't think this will necessarily mean that you can't become a really good archer or two-weapon fighting character, things of that nature, with a given Ranger, but I think also you might see Rangers with combat specialties with weapons with backswing, or weapons with deadly. Perhaps they'll treat their proficiency rank as one higher with that weapon, perhaps they'll get their own special ways to interact with that weapon. Combat styles were really important to the Ranger in Pathfinder 1st edition, and it seems only fair to evolve them to include these new weapon groups that are going to be so important. Last but not least, the Sorcerer. Now that's been talked about a little bit on Paizo Fridays. There hasn't been a blog yet. I imagine it will probably be the next blog we see, and you know, it might even go live sometime this afternoon, in which case we'll get right on it. The first thing I predict for the Pathfinder 2nd edition Sorcerer is that they will be able to use their spell points to do things kind of like the Arcanist in Pathfinder 1st Edition. Your dimensional slides, your flame arcs, things of that nature. Spend a spell point to essentially spontaneously snap fire from your fingers, or teleport a short distance away, things like that. It seems really on flavor for the class, and again, we're seeing a lot of classes merge together in Pathfinder 2nd Edition, so in my mind it's only logical. My second prediction is that the Sorcerer bloodline will be reflected in class feats, and it will only develop as far as you, the player, choose to develop it. For example, maybe you only want the resistance to cold that the undead bloodline gets you. You don't want to be healed by negative energy, harmed by positive energy, so you only invest a little bit into that bloodline. Conversely, the Draconic Sorcerer might want to put all his feats into his or her bloodline to achieve essentially the Dragon Disciple of Pathfinder 1st Edition. Regardless, I think the bloodline will still be something you pick at first level, and you'll still get minor abilities, not unlike, for example, how the Draconic bloodline sorcerers could grow claws. My final prediction for the Sorcerer and for this video is that sorcerers will be able to do the most with resonance. This is not only because they are charisma casters, but also because they are a charisma-based class. This isn't necessarily to say that all the best magic item users will be sorcerers, but resonance is an intrinsic thing to the character, your tie to magic and your inborn ability to attune yourself to items. I think the sorcerer will receive a small bonus on how many items they can use in a given day, whether that be how many items they can invest into, or just flat how many points of resonance they have to use on magic items. Anywho, that's all I've got for today. What do you guys think about all these? Am I on the money? Am I completely off base? Or is there anything that you personally predict for these classes moving forward? If so, as always, throw it down in the comments. We'll keep the conversation going. And hey, don't forget, all of these classes will be around for Doomsday Dawn, and we're playing it right here on Black Dragon Gaming. If you'd like to learn more about the giveaway, follow this card right up here. Remember that patronage at any tier grants you an extra entry in all our giveaways, and hey, if you can get me up about $100 more a month on Patreon, I'll take 2 groups through. Again, be sure to like and subscribe for more videos. Thank you guys so much for watching. The next episode of your Pathfinder 2nd Edition preview content drops this Saturday.